Thank you everyone for attending this meeting. I declare this meeting open at 7:01 p.m. and welcome everyone to this public meeting. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I would like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person here this evening. It is my prayer that as elected representatives, we speak respectfully and consider the needs of all current and future residents, as well as the impacts on the environment in which we live. Now, tonight, I would appreciate it if everyone present in this room allows us to make decisions free of interjections so that we can make the best possible decisions for the community. In particular, I'd like to call out a few rules and expectations. 1, we will have one person speaking at a time. The councillors will signal to me their interest and I will invite each of them to speak when appropriate. 2, the public has a right to attend this meeting as an observer. However, members of the public gallery are to observe in silence so as to allow the councillors to focus on decision making. 3, as per clause 5.31 of the Code of Meeting Practice, this council meeting is being recorded and it is being made available live via the council website. Only councillors and staff will be shown on camera. For the councillors participating in this meeting, I would also ask them under clause 5.30 to refrain from making potentially defamatory statements. 4, clause 2.1 of the Code of Meeting Practice outlines the principle for all meeting attendees to treat each other with respect and to behave in a way that contributes to the orderly conduct of the meeting. In particular for councillors, this means that their speeches and questions should remain on topic and genuinely focused on exploring the issue at hand, rather than on casting other councillors or members of the public in bad light. As chair, I will be ruling speeches and questions as out of order if I believe that what is being said is not consistent with our meeting principles in clause 2.1. 5, if any councillor would like to raise a point of order as per clause 15.1 of the Code of Meeting Practice, I ask that they turn off the mic and say point of order. I will then pause the timer and allow the councillor to raise their concern before I rule on whether it is a valid point of order. Now, in terms of apologies, we do have one, and that is Councillor Christine Kay, as she has a work commitment. So I seek a motion to accept the apologies and grant a leave of absence. That's moved by Councillor Alec Taylor, seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Apologies by staff?
Mr Mayor, there is one apology. The Director Community is on leave and the Manager Corporate Communications is acting in that role.
All right, thank you. Now, are there any conflicts of interest declarations for councillors? Yes, Councillor Greg Taylor.
Yes, I have a non-significant conflict of interest for both Rivera Minute 1 and Notice of Motion 1. I'll be leaving the room for those items. Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to? Okay. Yes. Sure. So we thank you for that. Now, are there any conflict of interest declarations for staff?
Mr Mayor, there are no declarations from staff.
Okay. Are there any documents circulated in the councillors' papers to be dealt with at the appropriate time during the meeting?
Mr Mayor, there is. In the Greens distributed this evening, there is a letter from Mayor Nye to Minister for Planning and Public Spaces dated 31 May 2024 and a response received from the Minister today dated 4 June 2024.
All right, thank you. Are there any reports to be considered in a closed meeting and not released to the press and public?
Mr Mayor, there are no reports in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Now, we move on to mayoral minutes. So there is one mayoral minute, which is extraordinary meeting background information. I don't intend to speak to it. I think I will wait for Councillor Greg Taylor to leave the room. It's going to be a long night, so I don't intend to speak to this, and I'm suggesting that we note and receive the mayoral minute. Are there any speakers to MM1? If not, let's put it to a vote. All those in support of mayoral minute 1, please raise your hand, and that is unanimous. All right, so we can ask Councillor Greg Taylor to come back in now. So, are there any petitions? No? So, notices of motion. Our first notice of motion is NM1, Transport Oriented Development SEP, a fresh approach aimed to achieve a better outcome for Ku-ring-gai. I note that Councillor Greg Taylor's light is on. Did you want to say something?
I'd just like to make 2 quick personal remarks. Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Pettit and Spencer for including me in their proposed liaison team. But I would prefer in future if councillors did want to include me in motions that they could ask me first. And secondly, I feel it's highly inappropriate for residents to publish
Point of order,
residential.
Mr. Mayor. We're actually debating the motion. We actually haven't got to it yet.
I'm not debating anything. I'm presenting a personal.
The Code of Meeting Practice allows for the Mayor to allow councillors to speak for an unlimited period of time if they believe they have been misrepresented. So that is the situation here.
I'm sorry, can you clarify this, please? Misrepresented? In what way misrepresented?
I will have to pull out the relevant. Just
How he was misrepresented?
I might be able to answer
so,
this question.
Councillor Greg Taylor, would you like to clarify why you believe?
So I've had a number of calls and emails from residents asking why I agreed to be a part of this this motion, and I just thought it's appropriate that in the future, if we all want to include somebody in a motion, that councillor should be notified first. If I'm allowed to continue, I do have a second personal statement.
No, I'm sorry, how was that misrepresentation?
It's members of the public believing Councillor Greg Taylor is of a certain view based on what's been printed.
No, sorry, because this notice of motion was moved by Councillor Pettit and myself. So
Yes.
it wasn't him. So how was he misrepresented?
The code is about councillors believing they have been misrepresented. So it's not to do with your view.
No, sorry. I'm sorry. Just bear with me, please. So it says here that council assembles a team which includes those names. How is that misrepresenting?
If this is too much of a problem, I can ask a question when we do start
Let's
debating.
deal with it as part of the speeches. Like if
Because
people would prefer that.
misrepresenting something is a code of conduct thing.
It's not a code of conduct.
No,
Now,
because you're
Councillor
suggesting...
Greg Taylor, is your light still on? Okay, Councillor Cedric Spencer, would you like to move a motion?
I thought he's conflicted.
That was for Tiny Forest.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry.
So we're doing
NM1
the
now.
transport oriented development.
Okay, good. Thank you. So I would like to move NM1. Just to note that there is a small amendment, a small change of wording there. Staff has it. So in point D, if I can just explain. So in point D, so staff will put the wording up. So in point D, it says there, somewhere in the middle, council suspend the current legal action to, that is to be amended to, to be printed as, council to seek to adjourn the current legal action pending the result of the discussions and so on. So everything else remained the same except for that wording there. So changing the word, yes. So that's the correct wording there. So you see the word adjourn. So, and you see what's printed there that you have. It says council suspend. We changed that to council seek to adjourn. I will speak to that in a minute.
So
But
it's
I just want to
moved,
highlight that point. Yeah.
moved by Councillor Spencer, seconded by Councillor Pettit. Councillor Spencer, you have
Thank you.
5 minutes.
So I will not spend much time talking about this. So essentially, it's been stated there, and there has been a lot of talk and so on about what we're doing and so on. So firstly, it is not a rescission motion. We are not. Now, this point D is really interesting. I had a meeting with the general manager and the lawyer today, and we're thinking how to word this thing, because our intention is not to discontinue legal action. When we discussed this, some people were complaining that the wording may be too technical if we say stand the matter on a list while we negotiate. So people might, they don't really understand what do you mean by stand the matter on a list and all those things. So, and I thank the corporate lawyer today for suggesting this, that we seek to adjourn. Well, in the first place, we didn't put the word adjourn because the hearing is not until July. So there's nothing to adjourn. Assuming if this thing was passed tonight, just assuming, if this thing was passed tonight, we don't need to seek to adjourn because we're not going to discontinue legal action. We are going to negotiate with the minister, and the minister has indicated in the Daily Telegraph that he's willing to negotiate with us. And then we'll see what happens. Now, we do not withdraw our case. We do not say we discontinue the case before we even start negotiating, because then why are we withdrawing when we've got nothing from the minister? Now, secondly, why I didn't use the word adjourn at first, because we need to seek their consent to adjourn. So both parties must agree to adjourn, otherwise we'll be fighting, basically. So I chose the word suspend, meaning that we do not fight, but it doesn't mean that we stop fighting. No. We want to negotiate first. Now, and the other thing that I would like to point out is this. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in the community as to what we are fighting about. Now, we are not fighting to stop tort, because tort has been implemented. That is the truth and that is the fact. We are fighting for some other things, and I don't have to discuss those things, and it's not really confidential anyway, because the opposition, meaning the state government, has received a copy of our summons anyway. So they know what are the issues we have raised. So most importantly is that we're not fighting to stop tort. So tort has already happened, and we are going to court to seek declaration on certain things. I don't have to discuss those things. So essentially, tonight's EMC is just to give us one last opportunity to talk to the minister to see if we can take control of our planning. Why? Because if we don't, currently we have no control. We have no control on torts. We have no control on our planning whatsoever. It will be decided by the court, and it will probably take 9 months or a year at least. But in the meantime, tort has been implemented. But if we can talk to the minister, if we can come up with something in the meantime, then we can start planning around whatever has been implemented. That meaning to say, to lessen the blow. It's already happened. They have already bombed the 4 stations. It's already happened. But what we want to do is salvage the thing and say, hey, look. Now, the thing is very simple. We're not suggesting anything, and my ward is not affected. You all can vote against this, it doesn't matter, because this affects Gordon and Linfield. So those 4 stations are toted. What I'm hoping to achieve is that I don't want to make it worse, because if we keep antagonizing them, they might end up toting another 4 more stations. And this is what I don't want. And after that, where does it end? I'm going to carry on speaking. So after that, where does it end? They might even take, I'm just going to finish off. I know I was distracted a little bit.
Last sentence then.
Yeah. It's not a long sentence. So we don't want that. And I think we can work around 4,600. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Hetet, as the seconder, would you like to? Okay, next, so Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, I'd like to do a little myth busting. Firstly, other councils have not successfully negotiated better TOD outcomes. They haven't. The best that any of them have achieved is a small delay of the TOD to plan for as much or more housing as implied in the original legislation, without any concessions, without flexibility to materially shift density between stations, without commitments for supporting infrastructure, with no compromise at all. That is not negotiation, that is dictation. We had the same discussions. We just didn't agree to the unreasonable demand to unlawfully complete our own planning in just 6 months to deliver the unreasonable and infeasible targets. Secondly, the so-called targets announced a couple of weeks ago are not actually targets at all. 2 weeks ago, the government announced a 5-year forecast of development take-up based on assumptions applied to the original implied new dwelling targets in their legislation. Ku-ring-gai is still expected to roll over and allow 4,000 to 5,000 new dwellings within 400 metres of each of the 4 TOD stations. The 7,600 number is a fiction. This will bulldoze over the tree canopy and heritage conservation areas, and there is no supporting infrastructure on offer. The targets are still completely unreasonable and infeasible without a massive investment in supporting infrastructure. And that brings me thirdly and finally to the $200 million announced by the state government last week, which is a token amount. It admits fault without solving the problem. $200 million across New South Wales is a drop in the ocean of the infrastructure investment required to support hundreds of thousands of new dwellings. The entire $200 million could easily be spent in a single LGA like the Inner West, for example, and they haven't actually been offered a cent of it. Yes, we need to urgently improve and clarify the scope of the transport-oriented development program, particularly with regard to the impact on the tree canopy, heritage conservation areas and stranded heritage items. But our best hope at this point to achieve fair, reasonable and feasible outcomes is to continue to pursue the legal challenge post-haste. Councillors Pettit and Spencer should feel free to use any relationships they may have to see if they can achieve the impossible, what hasn't been achieved anywhere else in New South Wales. But we can't wait for them. We need to urgently push on with a legal challenge for our community.
No clapping, please. We just remain in silence. So you can clap after the council meeting, right? Like you can talk to councillors all you want, but not during the meeting. Next up, the light is Councillor Martin Smith.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yes.
First of all, just in relation to this notice of motion that's been put forward here this evening, I think one thing that we really need to address, which I believe that this notice of motion that's been put forward is trying to unravel, is that, Mr. Mayor, can you just tell us what you have actually done in relation to trying to negotiate with the New South Wales State Government?
Okay, so on the On the 21st of November, Council resolved to write to the Planning Minister with our concerns about housing. And so on the 23rd of November 2023, I wrote a letter to the Planning Minister seeking an opportunity to discuss housing, as well as Linfield Village Hub. On the 27th of November, the Planning Minister wrote back saying that he's open to a meeting, and we arranged a date, which was the 15th of February. Now, closer to the 15th of February 2024, he postponed it for whatever reason to make it the 29th of February. And so it was the 29th of February, which was over 3 months after our first letter, that I actually had the opportunity to sit down with the Minister. On our side, we had other council staff members, the Acting General Manager, the Director of Strategy and Environment, and the Director for Regulation. Now, and on their side, there were a number of ministerial staff and department staff. During that meeting, it was quite a productive meeting. The Minister, we asked the Minister, what are the targets for each of these Todd precincts? Can you tell us? And the Minister did not have any number for us and said, we'll get back to you. So on the following day, on the 1st of March, the department staff did contact us and say it was 4,500 to 5,000 per Todd precinct because they were average sized precincts. During that meeting on the 29th of February, the Minister also said we will continue this discussion next week, and the date of 7th of March had been appointed. But on the 6th of March, I was told by council staff that I was no longer invited to this meeting on the 7th of March. So I had been really looking forward to that opportunity to continue discussing what we can do about these Todd precincts, but there was no interest on the Minister's side. Subsequently, the following month in April, they announced that 12 out of 13 councils had been willing to negotiate and do all that sort of stuff, but that one had not. They did not specifically mention Ku-ring-gai, but the media figured out it was Ku-ring-gai. I wrote a letter that day to the Minister saying, what's the deal with this? Because there were 13 councils who wanted to negotiate with you, 13 councillors who were willing to engage, and I'm still waiting for that second meeting. And in response to that, he finally said, okay, we'll have a second meeting, let's make it the 2nd of May. And during the 2nd of May, we had the second meeting where we discussed various things. And during this meeting, I did say, can we please have a deferred commencement just like the other councils? And he made it firm that, no, you're not getting a deferred commencement. I also said during that meeting on the 2nd of May that some residents have mentioned potentially doing legal action in order to create a deferred commencement, but he wasn't interested or bothered by that at that point in time. So in terms of other negotiations, more recently in the Greens, I have written to the Minister last week on two things. One was on our low and mid-rise housing, because we had a number of questions about the possibility of deferred commencement on low and mid-rise and the possibility of doing an LEP so that low and mid-rise no longer applies. These questions, by the way, I had already asked him on the 2nd of May and he did not commit to an answer. And in his response sent to us just a few hours ago, he said, since there's legal action, I'm not inclined to meet with you at this point in time. But he did not answer any of those questions that we raised either. So he didn't answer it on the 2nd of May and he didn't answer it in this letter. That's a bit of the summary.
So in fairness, with everything that you've just explained there, you've done everything as Mayor of Ku-ring-gai to be able to negotiate with the state government. Would that be a fair summary?
I've done everything that I can. I've also tried other avenues, right? Like I've tried reaching out to a Labor mutual friend and saying, look, can I be connected? And there was no response on that either. So I've done whatever I can.
So Ku-ring-gai's out in the cold a little bit. The next thing I'd like to address with this, and I'm actually now going to speak against this notice of motion. We had a unanimous resolution from council, and I think in total we've had all 9 councillors support the legal action that this council has commenced against the state government. There's only actually been one councillor that I believe hasn't shown her hand on how she's voting on this matter, and that's Councillor Kay. So we don't know whether or not she supports or she doesn't support. Putting that aside, since that legal action's been commenced, what has changed? Nothing has changed from what I can see. There's nothing more they're offering. There's nothing more that they're sort of giving us. They're giving us really no choice other than to go down this path. The state government, and I'd actually have to say all state governments really in precedent have never shown that they really negotiate with the council. The only way that a council can negotiate with the state government, unfortunately, is through legal action. Legal action was taken with a couple of councillors that actually Councillor Pettit was on, which was against the council amalgamations. And if Ku-ring-gai hadn't led that charge back then, we would be amalgamated with Hornsby Council with a great deal of other problems. So, and since that point as well, there's many councils that are trying to de-amalgamate, and it was just something that Ku-ring-gai decided to look at it, get an opinion on it with the lawyers, and unfortunately it was the only way that we could get that outcome. This is the same type of thing. Do we just lie down and say, okay, we'll just cop it for the sake of just keeping everybody, let's say, the state government happy in what we're actually doing? No, we don't, because if we did, what would actually end up happening is that they would feel that they could walk over us just as easy on the next 4 stations as what Councillor Spencer was referring to there before, because they'll take them up easily as well if we don't show some form of resistance. I think we are where we are. Nothing's changed. Only I got some information tonight, which was Sydney Morning Herald at 5:18 p.m. Alexandra Smith has got an article in Sydney Morning Herald that states the New South Wales Liberals have moved to kill off the Minns government's signature density reforms and overturn new planning controls at 37 stations, where 6-storey apartment blocks would be built as part of its transport-orientated development program. In an extraordinary step, the opposition leader spokesman for planning, Scott Farlow, on Tuesday told Parliament that he would introduce a bill to allow for to kill off the transport-orientated development TOD locations. And I believe he's got the Greens support on it as well. So whilst we've got this in hand, and we've actually now got the New South Wales Liberal government that is listening to the people of New South Wales, why would we now lay down our legal action or move our position? Nothing has changed. I think we're in a good position, and I think we should move forward in the way that the 9 councillors have supported. Thank you.
No clapping. Now, next is Councillor Simon Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whenever any person initiates legal action, he or she has to be willing to stay the course. It's the same with any company. It's the same with any council or any level of government. We unanimously voted a few weeks ago to initiate this action. If we're not willing to stay the course, we shouldn't have started it. I'm willing to stay the course. Anyone who's not willing to stay the course might as well say so now and duck out. Because litigation is long and it's arduous and it takes guts. And we've got the guts, I believe, as a council to stay the course. Because as I think we've just heard from Councillor Smith, that is the only recourse we have at the moment. As we've heard from you, Mr. Mayor, we have tried. We have tried to make the case as to why the TOD reforms are bad for the people of New South Wales. And the state government has not cared. It has not listened and it has not cared. Our only recourse has been litigation. And I've been involved in a lot of litigation as a corporate lawyer. And litigation does not stop parties talking. If the minister wanted to talk to us, if the minister was open to the invitation you've given to speak with him, he would do so. If anything, litigation assists dialogue between the parties because it crystallises issues. It allows the parties to see what is important between them. To continue the litigation is to assist the people of this state in fighting these appalling reforms. By all means have dialogue, always have dialogue, but we don't need to suspend the litigation or adjourn it to achieve that. Because these reforms are so bad for New South Wales. We have in this state an economy that is a fake economy. It is predicated upon build, demolish, and rebuild. More than 2,000 years ago, the Chinese philosopher Confucius said that the strength of a nation lies in the integrity of its homes. 50, 100 years ago, we had strength as a nation. We built homes that had integrity. They were all over New South Wales, they're all over this country. But at the moment, state and federal governments of both sides have subscribed to a fake economy by which we demolish structurally sound, elegant and beautiful homes, and in their place we put up throwaway buildings, disposable buildings. A friend of my middle daughter is a tradesman. Most of his work nowadays is repairs of new buildings. A recent state government report suggested something like half the new buildings in this state have issues. We are building poor quality buildings. We are not creating wealth. Development in Australia in 2024 is not creating wealth, it's destroying wealth. That is why it is a fake economy. We are taking good buildings and turning them into throwaway buildings with this economic model. And this Todd set is at the forefront of that model. All over New South Wales, good, sound buildings are threatened with demolition, and in their place are threatened disposable buildings, not just ugly buildings, but buildings that are not designed to last. They're there to make quick bucks, quick money for a development industry that doesn't care. My wife was recently talking to a retired builder, and he said that when he was working, he always sought to make good buildings. He had pride in what he did. It meant something to the traditional builders of this country to build quality buildings. The current building industry in this state does not facilitate good buildings. It just facilitates pointless economic activity. It looks good as economic data. It's numbers on a table, but it is not creating wealth. And this Todd set is part of this fake economy. So it is extremely important that we persist with this legal action. By all means have dialogue. I'll always have dialogue with anybody. But persist with the legal action. Show that when we start a legal action, we persist. We're stayers. We don't just flutter in and out of legal action. We might flutter in and out of a back garden barbecue or something. This is a big deal, this litigation, and I'm here for the cause. So I oppose this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Pettit.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to cast back to May 2020 when our local MP said, and I quote, that he further stated that the strategy does not explore, as it should have, the potential for increasing the population load of Roseville as well as Linfield. Interesting, back then, wasn't it? Our local member was saying we should be looking at Roseville and Linfield to actually increase the population. He actually come up with some outstanding numbers for us to put in our housing strategy at that point in time. And we're probably suffering because of it. For 2021 to 2026, he recommended 250 dwellings. For 2026 to 2031, another 250 dwellings. We wonder why we're in a housing crisis when we took advice like that. Fantastic. So, why are we here? This motion has good intentions. It's always better to negotiate than to litigate. However, we're at this point in time where people prefer to litigate than negotiate. It's very hard to negotiate with the minister after he knows that you're taking legal action. When you go to the bank and you require a loan, do you kick the bank manager in the shins in asking for a loan? Probably not. Probably not very successful, is it? Well, we're wanting to litigate. We're sticking it to the state government. And yet, some way down the track, we've got a motion to go and explore funding for Marion Street from the same state government. I would suggest that our success chances are greatly diminished somewhat. We're wanting to sue the state government, but then asking for money on a different project. That's just my perspective. Whether it turns out that way or not, who knows? And we get our wonderful emails from our local folk group saying the Councillor Spencer and Pettit have called for an extraordinary meeting on Tuesday, blah, 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 to rescind Ku-ring-gai Council's legal action. Nowhere does it say rescind. Fake news. At least tell the truth. Nowhere does it say rescind. Dear God, tell the truth for once. The legal advice that they have acted upon would have good prospects, otherwise it would not have been unanimously approved. Apparently folk know our confidential briefings. Outstanding. So given that how much folk influences things, peddles misinformation, from my perspective, is there any point voting
Point of order.
against it?
Point of order.
Councillor Smith.
I believe there's a bit of slander going on, and actually nobody from folk is able to defend themselves on what's been said. And I really don't think that we should be. I think it could be putting this council in a position when we're stating that they're spreading false news.
Councillor
for it to be
Pettit, do you
withdrawn.
have...
Mr Mayor, I'm actually reading off their email where it actually says rescind. So that is factually incorrect.
I would just like to clarify a little bit further on that. What I was actually referring to, where you were saying that they were misrepresenting positions and so forth, I believe that that could be seen as slander. Thank you.
Fair enough. I'll withdraw that comment. But obviously, what happens, you get this information that goes out into the wide world. People read it. They take it as truth. There is no truth where it says rescind in this motion. So unfortunately, that is factually incorrect. Yes, and comments from the peanut gallery as usual, unfortunately. However, moving along, do I see any point having a differing opinion on this matter? No. So it is easy just to agree with the majority of you, whatever that position is. It makes my life so much easier just to fold in with the rest of you. To not have a differing opinion. Actually not have a differing thought. Funny, Australia is a democracy where we're meant to have freedom of choice, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom to have a different thought. We come up with a different concept here. And yet we get pilloried by the keyboard warriors and the keyboard cowboys and the keyboard commentators. Unfortunately, that's the rise of social media. People can hide behind a keyboard. It's a sad state of affairs. People just look for negativity in their lives. I've never met a happy activist. They're always looking for something negative. Unfortunately, there is no point proceeding with this motion.
Okay, Councillor Barbara Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I have a question of you, I guess. If this was to go through, do you really think this will change? Do you think the minister will have a conversation that may change his mind?
I don't believe that he is genuinely interested. Like, why defer the first meeting? Why promise a second meeting and then cancel it? Why, when the second meeting finally happened in May, then not offer any concessions, not offer anything at all? And why, when I write a letter, again, just to offer another opportunity, he has no interest in doing it? Like, I don't think he's genuinely interested. The one thing that he would be interested in is if the legal action were to stop. That he would be interested in. But I don't believe he's interested in helping reconsider lifting the TOD and giving us a similar amount of time as other councils to plan.
I have another question through you, Mr. Mayor, on this particular motion on point B. This council immediately assembles a working party which includes Councillor Greg Taylor. Did Greg Taylor, through you, Mr. Mayor, agree to that?
From what I understand, when I checked with Greg Taylor after this was published, he said, no, I had no part in it.
You can delete that.
Do you want to delete that now?
We
or-
can delete that because I didn't want his name there in the first place.
Okay, well, Councillor Pettit as seconder, are you okay with deleting that name? Okay, let's delete that name. Done.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to now speak to that motion. The
Sure.
sudden announcement by the New South Wales government is causing a lot of stress in our area. The proposed Todd development plan will have a devastating impact on our heritage, tree canopy, biodiversity, open space and character of the 4 Todd sites. I have mentioned on a number of occasions that I am not at odds with the state government, nor am I anti-development or so-called NIMBY. My position is very clear. I support the government's initiative and I believe that it is imperative for Ku-ring-gai to participate in reducing housing crisis. However, I have expressed that I do not agree with the state government's one-size-fits-all top-down housing policy and have requested that we undertake appropriate master planning which is sympathetic to our heritage and environment. Taking legal action against the state government is not an easy choice, nor the course of action that I desire. However, it is necessary because most residents of Ku-ring-gai we represent want to preserve our environment whilst contributing to the larger issues such as the housing in our community. Almost every day we hear that Australia's environment loss is at a crisis level. Yet there appears to be no regard for this as part of the Todd, nor is this issue able to attract the same level of media attention and public awareness. I commend the Premier for his ambitious vision for Sydney and surrounding areas with the implementation of Todd to reduce housing crisis. However, the project is rushed as it tries to balance housing needs, heritage preservation and environment sustainability. All of these remains a challenge for Ku-ring-gai Council as it navigates the implications of Todd. There is no denying that we should negotiate, and indeed we have tried to do that. There is no denying that a dialogue between the council, residents and state government is important, and we have tried to do that. It will help shape the future development of our council, of our community, and have a satisfactory outcome. But it seems to me there is not much of an appetite from the government or the minister. To me, it is curious as to why the minister will not grant us our request as done for other councils. I do not support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wheatley.
Apologies, I have a cold, so I don't quote words. I won't be supporting this motion either. We need to continue with the litigation against the New South Wales State Government. This proposed changes are massive and sudden in town planning terms as well. In regards to the loss of heritage and tree canopy, it will be devastating for the Ku-ring-gai area. In particular, with heritage, 40% of the land proposed for high density development within 400 metres of the 4 stations listed as heritage conservation areas or a heritage item. For Kalara Station, it's 83% of the affected land is heritage listed, and for that reason I can't support this.
All right, I will speak to this motion as well. I'm speaking against. Now, I'm actually of the view that we can support a lot more housing in Ku-ring-gai. So I'm quite optimistic about the future, but and look, I want to do it as well because I know people are looking for homes. I've got 3 children and one day I hope that they can live close by to where I live as well. I need someone to look after me when I get old. But the thing is, we're not looking just to build well-located homes that are close to a train station. There's a lot more to a home being well-located than just proximity to transport. We need to make sure that they have good access to good quality open space. We need to make sure that the roads, the active transport links, the schools, the healthcare services, shops, that's all in place as well. And from my education, my background in studying sustainable development at uni, that often comes with planning. You need to plan first. You need to plan how you fit these homes before you bring the people in. If you plan up front, it's a lot more cost effective because you've put the infrastructure in place. You don't need to retrofit it. Anyone involved with project management knows that. You can't just do it on the fly and then at the end change the scope and expect a good outcome at a good cost. It's very important to decide the scope, decide what needs to be done up front, And then that way you can do it in the most cost-effective and efficient manner possible. Same with this whole transport-oriented development thing. Look, I understand why the state government is doing this. They feel the pressure, and I commend their motive to act. But I believe that we could get a much better outcome for our future residents of Ku-ring-gai if we have the time to plan properly. If we had the time to plan properly, perhaps we'd say, look, we're still doing 5,000 in this precinct, but there will be more in this place that's not a heritage conservation area, and there will be less in the heritage conservation area. And if we had done that, if we had the 12 months that we had asked for, the same 12 months that other councils were given, then that might actually lead to a faster delivery of homes, because we'd be looking at parts of the precinct where the FSR is greater than 2.5 to 1, and where there would be greater incentive to develop those sites sooner. But this whole thing about, oh, we're just going to go 2.5 to 1 across the board, regardless of the slope of the land, regardless of what terrain is there, regardless of heritage conservation area or what infrastructure is in place, that's quite inefficient. Now, with this legal action, it's not something that I want to do, right? And I've made it clear in my letter to the planning minister. I don't want to do legal action, but we've had no choice. We need to secure a way for us to plan properly before we can provide for these future homes. And also, if we do it this way, there are quite significant savings for the ratepayer as well, because if we win, we have the opportunity for infrastructure outcomes at a relatively more reasonable price than inflated toy prices. So ultimately, look, legal action, I'm not super keen about it, but we've got absolutely no choice. We've negotiated a number of times. The planning minister has had no interest whatsoever, and sometimes there's nothing else that remains for us to do other than legal action. It may be that the lawyers from both sides end up talking about mediation or some other solution, that's fine. Or it may be that we end up having a court hearing, that's fine as well. But we really have run out of options here. We've tried as much as we can, all the way from start to finish. The state government has no interest in planning well. The state government has no interest in having good outcomes for the future of New South Wales residents. And for that, I'm quite disappointed. I commend their desire to reach a target, and I'd like to reach a target too. But if you don't do it properly, if you don't plan at the start, and also if you don't fund it properly, it's not going to happen well. My final comment is I'm just quite disappointed that, look, 7,600 in 5 years, that's a target given to us. And from that, our residents will pay $78 million of housing contributions. But how much of that is coming back to Ku-ring-gai for local infrastructure? Not much. I'll leave it at that. Now, are there any other speakers? Councillor Greg Taylor, do you want to speak to this or no? If there's no other speakers, I'll invite Councillor Spencer to sum up.
Thank you. So, I'm glad most councillors spoke tonight, so their positions are clear, except for Greg Taylor. It's very important to clarify tonight, and you have, that you do not wish to negotiate, you wish to proceed with legal action, and therefore you cannot then turn around at a later stage.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe you said that. Did you say that?
I don't believe the councillors have
that is
said
disorder,
that.
and that is a misrepresentation. I don't believe you said you don't want to negotiate. Did you say that, Mr. Mayor?
So, no, I've been willing to negotiate the whole time, and I've repeated it in many places. Yeah, please continue, Councillor Spencer.
All right, so just let me clarify. My friend here likes to call point of order when he doesn't understand what it really is. Look at this. It says, in good faith, somewhere down, have a look at the NM. If staff could scroll down, please. Yeah, please pause the time for a moment. It says to negotiate, right? And if you are voting against this, you don't want to negotiate. It's as simple as that. Okay? So there's no two ways about it. It's either you negotiate or you don't negotiate. Now, I am doing my closing now, all right? So they have had the chance to speak. So do not turn around later on to say the state government refused to negotiate with us because we decided not to negotiate tonight. Now, the other thing is, when you send, I agree with what Councillor Ward has said tonight. When I'm sure she's a very successful business person. When you send someone to negotiate and this person fails, don't you want to send a different team to try and negotiate? Instead of just taking this person's word that, hey, look, the guy is not willing to talk to me, there's no deal and whatsoever. I would send a different person, or I would try again and again until I close the deal. That's how sales is done. Now, the other thing is, amalgamation is really a bad example. Legal action was taken before amalgamation. Now here you have legal action after tort. I mean, what are you trying to do? So I understand the first one, amalgamation, you sue to prevent amalgamation. But this one here, we decided to sue on the 8th. But on the 13th of May, tort was implemented. What are we suing then? We're not suing to stop tort. Not a single councillor tonight has said we are suing to overturn tort or to stop tort. You only said we're going to sue. Yes, sue what? No, nothing. You just want to sue. What's the point of suing? Oh, come on. I mean,
Let's continue,
all right, I'll continue. So they're suing for no reason. Now, again, people are watching from my ward and from the other wards are watching. Why is this ward in Roseville and Gordon dragging all of us down in this path, paying for advertisement and legal fees and so on? And in the first place, if they had just talked to the state government, they won't be torted at all. They would have been given a 12 months extension, just like all the other councils in New South Wales. Ku-ring-gai is the only one that was implemented. We've been taught a lesson. So again, thank you for all speaking against this motion. Do not then turn around and say, we want to negotiate, but they refuse to because you have just rejected this again. Thank you.
So let's put this to a vote. All those in favour of NM1, what's before us on the screen, please raise your hand. And that is Councillor Spencer. And those against are Councillors Pettet, Lennon, Smith, Wheatley, Councillor Alec Taylor, Councillor Greg Taylor, Councillor Ward, and Councillor Nye, so that is defeated. Now, the next item is notice of motion number 2, which is the cancellation of tiny forest project at West Pymble Village Green. We will wait for Councillor Greg Taylor to depart, and then I seek a motion from one of the movers. Councillor Pettet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion as printed. Seek a seconder.
Seeking a seconder for this motion.
Maybe not. Maybe we'll just go home. Okay, fair enough. Forget it.
So, just to confirm, if there is no seconder, then this thing lapses. So that is that. Now, next, we'll wait for Councillor Greg Taylor to come back in. Should have declared a site inspection or something. Anyway, conclusion of the meeting. There being no... Quiet, we're nearly done. There being no further business, I would like to thank councillors and staff. I would also like to thank members of the public for their attendance. The webcast of this meeting will be available on the council website and minutes will be published within the next 2 working days. I declare the meeting closed at 7:55 p.m.